Hi.
Hi. Okay, so I'm Nisa. I'm an intern at Intern Mart.
So my name's Lauren Hollis. I'm a sophomore at the University of Pennsylvania. I'm studying economics and international relations. I went to high school with Nisa, so we go way back. But I'm really excited to be here and give some advice and hopefully help you guys out with your application process because I know it's a crazy kind of experience. So hopefully I can be a helpful asset.
Awesome. So, to get started, how early should one start planning for college?
So I was kind of an extreme case. I started planning like freshman year of high school, and in my mind, I was like, I'm gonna have so much time to figure out exactly what I want and plan to get everything perfect. And I did have that time, but I also was totally burnt out by the time I actually had to apply for college's senior year. I like wanted nothing to do with it anymore. I was so tired of talking about it. So I think like end of sophomore year is honestly a good start to kind of like scope around, look at like some local colleges near you. Like if you're from New Jersey, look at like some state schools, some schools in Philly, things like that. And then you can kind of start there so you still have a lot of time to get prepared for everything, kind of figure out what you like and what you don't like, but you won't have that burnout feeling that I got. Because it is a stressful time, but like you want to make sure that stress is like limited. I spent way too much time thinking about colleges. So end of sophomore year I think is a good time to like kind of dip your toe in the water.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What criteria needs to be followed in order to shortlist colleges?
Yeah, so there's a lot of factors about like picking the perfect school for you, and it can be a little overwhelming. So I'm going to pick the ones that I thought were the most important. So the first little thing I want to talk about is the size of the school. I know a lot of people actually don't think about this, and thought it was really important. Some people will do amazing at like a giant state school like Rutgers or Penn State. They love having all these people. But I knew for me, I would get really overwhelmed in that kind of environment. But then on the flip side, like my dad went to a super, super small school, like less than 2,000 people. And I knew I wouldn't like that as much. So I really wanted a middle sized school that had a good student to faculty ratio so I could still get like one on one attention if I needed to, but I could still like be in a big city, have a lot of new people to meet all the time. But I have friends who love their giant state school with like 60,000 people. And I have friends who love their really small liberal arts school that have like 2,000 people. So I think testing out a whole bunch of different schools that way is really important because you want to make sure like you're living there. This is your life for 4 years. You want to make sure you're in a comfortable environment. Going off of that, like the location, do you want to be in a city? Do you want to be in like a neighborhood kind of area? Do you want to be in the middle of nowhere? Like maybe during COVID, you want to be in the middle of nowhere. Who knows? But also, make sure the school has a good program for you. Like, if you want to be an engineer, there are some great schools, like Yale, for instance, is an amazing school, but their engineering program isn't like what they're known for. So you wouldn't necessarily want to go there for engineering. Whereas, like another school like Drexel, amazing engineering schools, it's completely different. So some schools are like all schools have like really great pros and cons. Make sure you're going to a school that has a program that's like it's well known for and it's what you want to study and what you want to go into. Um, the social scene is very different than the academic scene. So make sure it's like if you don't want to go to party school, make sure you're not going to a giant party school. If you do want to be able to go out into a city, make sure you're applying to schools that are in or near a city. So kind of what like the social life is as well as the academic life. Because again, this is your life for 4 years. You're not just going to have your head in a book unless like you want to. Make sure you kind of get that vibe. Also, cost is super important. The student debt crisis is nuts right now. I think every single school has to have this thing called a net price calculator, which is kind of like where you plug in all your family's financial information and it generates an approximate price of what you'd pay each year. And that's super helpful. So you kind of know going into it. Because I know so many friends who didn't do that, got into like the school of their dreams, just found out they can't afford it. And it was like really upsetting that if they did the net price calculator, they could have known beforehand and not gotten their hopes up and not be able to go at the end. So that's super important. You also want to see like maybe like the average salary post graduation because if you're spending like 70 grand a year, you kind of want to know you're going to get your money's worth out of it at the end. So see kind of how that is, what like people's career paths end up being, things like that. If it's something you're interested in. Every college has such different and amazing things to offer. So you're going to be, it's just a vehicle to get you where you want to go, but make sure it's a place that you're going to be comfortable in and happy in because you are going to spend 4 years there or 4 to 6. Some people take extra years for double majors or anything like that. So yeah, those the big factors I think people should consider.
Yeah. How does a student decide whether they should enroll themselves for the ACT or the SATs?
Awesome question. So I actually never took the ACT. From what I heard, the ACT was a lot more math and science focused. They have a whole science section where the SAT doesn't. The SAT has two English sections where the ACT only has one, I believe. I also heard that the ACT reading section goes by really quickly, like the timing of it's kind of weird. Um, so I think it depends on what kind of student you are. If you're more math science focused, maybe the ACT would be awesome for you. If you're more English focused, maybe the SAT. The only way to really tell is to do a practice test for both. You can buy books at Barnes& and Noble that have practice tests. You can borrow them from friends or the library, or I think Khan Academy even has like free SAT prep, like you can get like 4 exams for free. And then you can kind of just test out, see if this is a something that like, oh, I can see myself getting better and better at this, or if it's like this one just isn't for me. You also want to see if the schools you're applying to super score, where basically they'll take your highest English and your highest math, no matter how many times you took it, and that's your score. So if you got like a 1300, and the next time you got the same reading score but a way higher math score, or even a lower reading score and a higher math, they'll just take your highest from all. And that kind of like makes the school look better because like, oh, look at our kids getting high scores. It also helps you out because if you like bombed one section one day, take it again and do really well in that section, and it evens out. So see, and they know they do that for the ACT as well. So make sure your school does that, and schools you're applying to. I love schools that do that. That was such a savior for me. But yeah, definitely just do a practice test of both. If you're more math science heavy, ACT might be the route for you. SAT might be if you're like more English, or if you're like a kind of okay at both, kind of a thing. So it kind of depends where you're heading. Yeah.
Thank you. What are the current requirements regarding the ACT and SAT for UPenn admissions, keeping in mind COVID-19?
Yeah, so I actually did not know Penn was doing this, but they actually, for the 2020 to 2021 application cycle, so this year, all SAT, ACT, and subject tests are completely optional, and you're not going to be at a disadvantage if you don't submit it. So if you are like financially restrained right now, just don't want to go into a building with like people, you don't have to, and they'll still consider your application just as thoroughly as they would if you did submit it. So, and you're still allowed to submit it, but you just don't have to anymore, and you won't be penalized.
In your opinion, does applying for early decision or early action benefit a student?
Yes. Um, Early action and early decision really show a level of interest and commitment to this university because they want students who are just as excited about going to their school as they are about their university. They don't want kids that are like, they'll apply to 30 schools and then like just not end up going to your school, even if they do get admitted, because it like there's some sort of percentage of that they track, and they want that number to be really high, the amount of kids that end up actually committing. So EA, ED, it really shows them that you're interested in it, that you have all your stuff together, you were organized enough to get it done, and you also really want to go to this school. Penn does early decision. I applied that way. It is really scary. Like I always wanted to go to Penn, but even once I submitted, I was like, oh my gosh, if I get in, I have to go here. That's really scary. So make sure it is a school that you really have spent a lot of time looking into, making sure you have a good fit for, take a tour, do a virtual tour now, I guess. But it definitely is helpful, but it is intimidating, but I definitely think it gives you a little bit of a leg up because it just shows a level of commitment that way.
Gotcha. What should a student's personal essay be about? If you're comfortable, would you like to share with us what your personal essay was focused on?
Sure. So I think with all essays, I think you do a Common App essay, and then some schools require supplemental, like why you want to go to Penn kind of essays. For this, it doesn't necessarily matter what the overall topic is, because there's like 8 or 9 prompts to choose from for the Common App. It matters what kind of sub messages you have. I wrote mine. I picked prompt number 3. I actually have to go back and look at what I wrote about because it's been so long. But this was about a time I changed my opinion. So I wrote about how I went vegan when I was 15. And I made sure that my 3 or 4 messages weren't about like veganism, like who cares, right? Mine was about, I want to show that I can do my own research and I can listen to multiple opinions and sources to create my own kind of opinion, because that shows what kind of learner I am. It shows how I interact with the world. I just want to show that I'm like accepting and that I love hearing new ideas, and that like kind of like the moral belief behind veganism without preaching it kind of. And I also made it kind of funny just to show that I'm not some like I can do research kind of person. I want to show I have a personality too, because the essays are the time where they see beyond your stats. So they want to know what kind of person you are, what do you stand for, if you're funny, make it funny. If you're not that funny, don't try. It'll kind of like cringe them out. So just like be yourself in whatever way that is, and make sure that you have clear messages that are coming through. It's kind of like the theme of a book. It's the theme of your essay. Um, Also, for university specific essays, do your research on the school. Do not have one essay that you use for all of your why Penn, why Drexel, why like whatever. Don't do that and like sub in the names of the school because they can tell that it's really formulaic, it's not specific to the school, and it doesn't show actually why you want to go there because they know it's not like niche at all. Like I made sure I brought up Locust Walk in my essay because that's kind of like the heart of campus. I mentioned like programs I want to be a part of once I get there, things like that, like what my genuine interest was in the school. And when I applied to Villanova, I wrote I dropped some like little hints, like, oh, I know about your school, kind of a thing. So make sure you actually do your research on the school and not just make it formulaic because they can see right through that.
Okay. Who should you consider asking for a letter of recommendation?
Sure. So obviously, you should be a teacher that likes you. You don't want to get because you don't get to read your letters. They're normally like sealed in an envelope or sent directly to the school. You never see what they say about you, so you want to guarantee it's a teacher that likes you, or you have a personal connection to. I was kind of a teacher's pet in high school, so like I connected to my teachers pretty easily. But I picked my history teacher, who I was super close to. I had him for 2 years. He really knew me as a student. He knew how I studied and worked and my work ethic in the class. He also knew me as a person because we would like talk after class about like politics or like weird TV shows we both liked and things like that. So he knew who I was, and I had him for so long. So that was like really helpful. Also, similarly, if you had like a language teacher you had for a really long time, same thing like that. And I also picked my calculus teacher, and this was for a different reason. I actually really struggled in AP calculus my first marking period, and then I started going to him all the time. Like I would meet with him before school, after school, during lunch to try and just like understand math again. And so that I ended up getting an A in the class, a 5 on the AP exam, and he knew me really well by the end of it because I like spent so much time like asking him questions and being annoying that he knew my work ethic. He knew I wasn't just a person who was like gonna accept defeat. And I hopefully he read about that. I have no idea what any of them said about me, but he also knew me as a person because I spent so much time with him, like having him like tutor me and things like that. Um, One piece of advice I learned that I didn't really think would matter, but apparently it does show some sort of impact. Have it be from one of your core courses if you can. So math, science, history, English, or a language. If you're really, really close with like your band director or your choir teacher or art teacher, they can also write you an essay. If you think they're gonna write you a better one than any of those teachers, sure. I think that can help. I think for one school I needed a third essay, a recommendation letter, so I had my music teacher provide one. But for the core ones, like if you only I would go for your teachers that are in a core subject. Unless you're going into music, then probably your music teacher is better. But they definitely want to see like someone who knows you in an academic sense, not necessarily a creative sense, unless you really think they're not going to write you something nice. But I would try and establish relationships with like teachers that you've had for either multiple semesters or are in one of those core subjects.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. According to you, how much weightage does the GPA have on the selection of a prospective student application?
Sure. So schools now, especially Penn really promotes this holistic approach. They don't just look at your statistics anymore, but that doesn't mean your stats aren't important. And I think especially in COVID times when your SAT is no longer necessary, this is their only indicator of how you perform as a student. So your essays, your recommendation letters, your extracurriculars, those all humanize you, but they do want to make sure that you like can do math, you can write an essay, and that this is the only way they can tell that. But it's not just like the 3.9 or anything like that. They want to see trends. So I got two B's and I still got into an Ivy League school. I got a B in my freshman year English class and my AP physics class junior year. But my freshman English class got a B on my report card. I was like crying, like I'm never gonna get into college now. I was like so freaked out about it. But they want to see trends. I got A's in all my other English classes, so they saw that I was getting better as my classes got harder. same thing. I know people that got a B in algebra 2, but then got an A in pre-calc and AP calculus, and so it didn't matter anymore because it shows like, okay, you learn from it, you can do better, and this is even a harder class, and you're doing better. So they want to see trends and growth. Also, if you had like a time where you got really sick one semester, like if you get like mono or like something like happens in your family or COVID's, I don't know how they're gonna be with it, but this is like a very like extenuating circumstance. So if there's a dip in your grade, you can explain that in your essays. You can explain that, have a teacher that knows about your circumstance, have them explain it in your letter of recommendation, because things happen that are outside of your control. The number itself plays a role, but they want to see growth. They want to see that you can overcome obstacles. So don't freak out if something like terrible happen and your grades dipped or anything like that. You can explain that and show how you moved past it, or how you worked hard in spite of that, or you learned from getting a bad grade one year to like put extra effort in your class. It's all about the overall picture. No one's gonna fixate on your 1B in your one semester.
Thank
Hopefully that helps. It plays a role, but it's not like seriously, it's not like that. So from what I know.
Okay. Not every student has the best of grades or is valedictorian, so how does one stand out in the application process?
Sure. So there is kind of a myth about this well-rounded student that every college seems to want. They really don't. They want a well-rounded class. They would rather have one student who's like really awesome at violin and one person who's like a soccer god or whatever, than one person who's like kind of okay at both, if that makes sense. Something I heard that was really helpful is have your spike or a couple of spikes, so something that you spend a lot of energy on and it's like is the big focus of your application, not like a flat like a master, like a jack of all trades but a master of none. They don't necessarily want that. So I only stuck to 3 clubs all of high school and my grades, and I volunteered. So I was in orchestra, DECA, which is a business competition club, and I was in Russian clubs. I took Russian in high school randomly. And I delved so far deep into those. I got leadership positions. I was actually passionate about all of these things. I loved orchestra. I loved DECA. I thought Russian was really cool. And that meant I had a lot to say in my interviews when I had like interviews for certain colleges, and in my essays, if I'd write supplemental essays about like a club I was in, I had a lot to say and I had a lot on my resume I could talk about. It also shows a level of dedication, passion, focus, and that I can prioritize things and that I kind of know where I'm going. This isn't to say you can't try out different clubs and like whatever, but definitely try and have like your spike. So work really hard in orchestra, or work really hard on your art or something like that, or in your business club or whatever kind of stuff you're in, or an internship or a job. Like if that's what you're into, it doesn't have to just be clubs. It can be a job you've had for a while or like anything like that. Because this is the holistic approach is really what they're gearing for. They want to see you as a person. They want to see how you would fit on campus, what you would bring to the university. I know some schools can let you even submit supplemental things. Like you can submit samples of your art, like a portfolio, even if you're not an art major, or a video of you playing violin, or like your soccer stats. You can submit those kinds of things that you like give that extra oomph. Like this is my spike. This is what I am really passionate about. I also recommend submitting a resume. You fill out the Common App. It's super annoying. Your resume doesn't say much different, but it does have it very succinctly. And that's where I talked about like what I did in my volunteer and research opportunities, what exactly I did in orchestra as a leader, not just saying I was an officer. Like what did I actually do? What I do in DECA, things like that. So yeah, that's how I definitely say like go for your spikes. Be dive into something you're really passionate about, so that way they can like be like, oh, this is our violin girl. Oh, this is our girl who speaks Russian, and then they'll have a well-rounded class on a bunch of well-rounded people. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was like shook when I first heard that they don't want well-rounded students. I'm like, what have I been doing?
That's like a huge rumor because it went from like, oh, they just want really academic students, and then it went to they want well-rounded students. Now it's like now they want like
Yeah, they want students who are like really passionate about something, not just someone who like kind of does. Like if you're in like 20 clubs, drop the ones you don't like, because colleges will also see that you're just trying to pad your resume and not like actually caring about any of it. If you're in 2 clubs but you're like top of your game in all of them, they're gonna like that a lot more than the person who's like running around all of lunch to different club meetings.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. And then last question is, do extracurriculars and internships play a crucial role in developing an application for a top college? And what are the kinds of things you did as a high school student?
Yeah, so this kind of connects to what I was saying for the last question. Extracurriculars, jobs, internships, all that are so important because it really does show you as a person. Your stats, like your SAT, your ACT, your GPA, that only really gives so much of a picture. It can tell that you're good at math or that you're like into science, but it doesn't really say like what you want to do with that, like what you want to do with those skills that you have. So in high school, like I said, I was in orchestra and I was the student director. So I did a lot of fundraising by myself. I got sponsorships. I did all that kind of stuff. And I played the cello. So I led rehearsals for the cello section. And that was like a lot of leadership opportunities with that. With the DECA, I competed in business finance for like 3 years and I made it pretty far in all of that. I made it to like nationals one year and I was the VP of finance for 2 years. So I was also, again, in charge of like fundraisers, things like that. Russian club, I was the vice president and then the president. So again, I like dived really far into these clubs so I could have a leadership position, so I could make an impact on my community. And then I could say a lot about that. The more passionate you are about something, the more you can talk about it. So when I had an interview and she's like, 'cause a million kids are in orchestra that are applying to Penn. Like everyone played an instrument, right? But it's like, how many of them played at Carnegie Hall? How many of them got to raise money and be like kind of blend business and music? How many people got to do that? Like what did you do besides just playing your instrument? And or if you just love playing it and you don't have a leadership thing, if you like genuinely love it and spend all your time like practicing playing, making whatever, that's something to talk about and not just like, I'm a general member in this club and this club and this and this and this. So extracurriculars are super important. Or if you're at a job, it's like Nisa, you're interning here at Intern Mart. Like you can talk so much about what you do here and all the skills you learn from that and how you're going to apply that in college. And then also show like just what you're interested in, what you're into. Kind of maybe give you an idea of what you want to do as a major or a career. I definitely think that's so important because they want to see what kind of person you are. They want to see how you're going to fit in on campus. Because one of the things that kind of shifted my idea of the college acceptance process or admissions process is if you get rejected from somewhere, it's not because you are necessarily like you didn't meet the qualifications. Like there are so many kids that apply to Penn and Harvard that have perfect SATs, awesome GPAs, but maybe they're just not a good fit for the school. They're not saying you're not qualified. It's just like maybe they're more of like a Columbia kid, or maybe they're more of a Drexel kid, and they'll just fit that vibe better. And the only way they can see that is through your extracurriculars and through like essays, jobs, all that kind of stuff, where the humanizing parts of you are. So hopefully that helps.
That is awesome advice.
Yeah.
Well, that concludes all of our questions. And then, yeah, like you said, like this internship is like really gonna help me out because, especially in these like COVID times, like all of my extracurriculars are being affected by that. So it's more difficult for me to like try to get to those higher positions and try to be more involved because I'm stuck here. I'm stuck at home. And then through this internship, I'm meeting so many people. I'm learning so many skills. And these are like general skills that college is going to be like, oh, she's like one step ahead. She has this skill, which she would probably learn from getting a different job, but she already has it. So
yeah, no, 100% helping you, especially like I can't imagine being in high school. Like I was so stressed out in high school. I couldn't imagine how you guys are doing it in COVID. Like it's gonna be so different for you guys. But even like people are affected by the pandemic differently, but the fact that like you're going out of your way to keep your time busy and still learn and still be involved in something, that still shows a lot. And I think a lot of people are probably going to write an essay about COVID to the point where the essay people are going to be so sick of reading about this thing. But you can say, like, what did I do for these like couple of months? And it's something you are passionate about and you did spend a lot of time on. You didn't kind of just like come to a meeting once in a while. Like you actually like delved in and like put a lot of time into it. And I think that's really cool.
So yeah. And then through the website, I also took like a career map quiz, which I'm still pretty unsure about like where I want to go to college, but I have like a general idea of what I want to go into. So, like that career map test kind of showed me like, oh, I'm gonna do I'm gonna have more interest in like this type of category, and then like rather than like I think one of my lowest ones was like business. And I knew I was like, yeah, that's not my thing. That's like
Yeah.
that. But it gave me a little more insight into like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Oh yeah, I think Naviance is what my, Cherokee has, right? Or our high school has.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so I remember doing that. I would fill out. They have all these. I'm sure you can get it somewhere that isn't Naviance. Like I'm sure there's online portals that do it if your school doesn't have that. But you can literally like, you think, okay, I want a school with 10,000 kids. I want a school in a city. I want a school that spends a lot of time on like engineering or whatever. And it'll like shortlist colleges for you. And if you like don't want to be far away from home, that's another big thing. A lot of people think they want to be like as far away from their parents as possible, and then they do it and they kind of freak out now that they're like so far away from home. Like I live pretty close to my school, and I love that because if I had like a really rough week and I just want to be with my mom, she could pick me up and I'd be home for a weekend and back by Monday morning. And that's like it's awesome to like travel outside your comfort zone, but that's also a thing to consider. I forgot to mention earlier, like
Yeah.
be realistic about how far you will be from your parent, like your parents, and stuff like that. Like my mom still does my laundry sometimes. Like it's great. Like wouldn't trade that. So but yeah, they can definitely like they can kind of like pick colleges that they think will like fit you well, and then you can kind of do stuff with that. So yeah, use the resources that are available to you, like career tests, like Naviance. It really does help, kind of, because it's so overwhelming. It's just I remember being so stressed out about this because it was like it's a huge decision, and you want to make sure you're spending as much time as you can to like really make sure you're making the right choice for you in your future.
Yep. Well, that concludes our live. So thank you so much for answering all these questions. I think like you gave super in-depth, like awesome answers for everything.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was so cool. I love like helping people out with this stuff. So,
Of course. So yeah, if you need any help with any career opportunities or internships, anything, visit internmart.com and you'll find all you need. Thank you. Bye.
bye. Thanks, guys.